on.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
I've muted him.
Okay. Carry on.
Yeah, sorry. That's to do around the three larger blocks: the early years block, the schools block, and the high needs block. So really, information in this report is just for information for you. The only decision is for you as a schools forum to approve the central schools block, which is the small element, just over 4 million of the DSG budget going forward for 23-24. So I'll quickly run through the report. The first table on page 1 is really just showing the movement in the overall DSG. That includes the 4 blocks, all the schools before anything, before any deductions. So it goes from went from just over 504 million to 543 million. So that's an increase of 38 million, and just over 7.5% increase from one year to the next.
I've seen. I've replied to them. Yeah.
So I've replied to Mum, and I've arranged a taster session for.
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody's got their microphone on and having a conversation in the background. If you're not speaking, can you turn your mics off, please? Thanks.
Cheers, Phil. The section on page 2, section 2, the schools block, that's just again reiterating the decisions that have been made at a previous meeting, both in the autumn and in the January meeting. So it's just background really for you, just for all members to remember what we actually decided, what you actually decided, and what we fed into the national funding formula, and how we've allocated the schools block. The table on top of page 3 is really just the final allocation and the detail really of where it's all gone. You can see the majority of it of the budget has gone to obviously to yourselves, to the schools, and then the other bits are to do with the growth funding, and the rest has gone to support services within education, which are the de-delegated items that mainstream schools have agreed to de-delegate in October or November. The high needs block, this is the one area where the local authority sets the budget in cooperation, consultation with the schools forum. We again talked about this at previous meetings, and this is really, the first table is just reiterating where we are with the long-term deficit or the overall cumulative deficit that we've accumulated on the high needs block. Even though we've received additional funding this year, and we've had for 23-24, and we've got the savings plans in place and the SEND Inclusion Change Programme, we're still anticipating for it to probably overspend by anything up to £5 million. That's the 4855 you can see in that table, which will give us a cumulative deficit of just under 25 million. And the table on top of page 3 is really where we're allocating those budgets in the financial year on the various elements of what that need to be funded by the high needs block. This is taking into account both of where it's trying to take a reasonable approach between where we actually are, in other words, the costs that are coming through at the moment, but also where we want to get to throughout the year and by the end of the year. So, we don't expect these budgets to be spot on every single one of them, but we're hoping that it will be, the best. It's our best guess at the moment, and hoping that the progress with the SEND Inclusion Change Programme continues. The early years block, again, decisions by yourselves were made in January about the allocations. You can see that the majority of it on top of page 4 goes to the 3 and 4 year old, and the 3 and 4 year old and the 2 year old funding. They are then the services which are subject to the 5% top slice by the local authority, which is the bottom 4 items. to do with the local authority responsibilities. That's showing that we're going to allocate the budget in total. I'll go into the main item and the item which we do need to have a vote on at the end of my chat. This is the, it's just 4 million of the 500 million DSG in total. For those who don't know, the funding we get from the government, we get 2 blocks. One is based on 2 historic factors, and the rest is funded to us on a per pupil basis. Now from 23-24, it's been reduced by another £1 per pupil. So that would have normally been about a £70,000 cut, but because our pupil numbers have increased, the actual overall reduction has only been about 26,000. We were due for another 20% reduction on the historic factors, but we were successful in our application, in our appeal to the DFE, and so that cut hasn't taken place. The table in 5.3 just shows where we've actually allocated this 4 million over the various areas. And then in 5.4 are where the changes have taken place from 1 year to, excuse me a second. From 1 year to the next. There were some areas where we are no longer funding services by the DSG, but it has been funded by the local authority, such as the mental health, 150,000 that was funded in 22-23 from DSG, but will not be in 23-24. That was previously what was called a shared service, and under the regulations, the schools forum could voluntarily contribute towards that. Because we were, because of the reductions in the funding over the last few years in this block, local authorities took the decision to actually fund this contribution themselves rather than the DSG to help it come back into balance. There were a few other minor things which contribute to which have moved about, but the major one is the admissions service, where the authorities acknowledge that there is some issues within the service and the provision of what takes place, and so we've actually increased the budget by 127,000, and this has been done by reducing budgets that funded shared services that were previously funded by what was called the Education Support Grant, which then got rolled into the DSG about 6 years ago. We've done that by reducing the cost there, and the local authority has covered that cost. There's been some slight reductions increase in the copyright license cost, but that's more or less been offset by the teachers' contribution grant and cost coming down, but we no longer have to pay VAT on the copyright license, so that's helped out slightly. 5.5 is just the main issue, just a mark in the sand that we're still going to have to look at this. It's still quite tight in this block. I feel we'll be successful with the 20% appeal going forward, but it will be if the government continue to make the £1 here, £1 there reduction per pupil. That's an area which we'll have to keep an eye on, and we'll track that throughout the year. So before we have a vote on this section, are there any questions?
Brian, you mentioned about we can continue to appeal against the for historic factors until they're cleared.
Yeah.
How long is that going to take?
How long?
5 years or 20 years or forever or what?
Okay.
Will we all have replied by then?
Well, I've got it in my diary for 2032 for some of the capital funding. I
Right.
can't remember when North Leamington was opened because that's one of the elements. So it's quite a few years time. It'll probably be Amy will probably be able to answer that. But the main the larger element, which is the contribution towards historic pensions. Well, some of these people retired very early, very young in life, and they've then got their any dependents after that when they die. So it could be quite some time. I'm probably 10, 15 years, maybe. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. Just get some idea of the scale.
Yeah.
Certainly welcome the additional funding for admission service, because those of us who sit on the admission appeals panel will welcome the increase in headcount and strengthening up of that team, because it has been causing us significant problems in the last 12 months. So yeah, very much welcome that. Yeah, I've got a few questions here. So Andy Mason, please.
Hi there. Just a question I got passed to me, to be honest. Could someone just explain a little bit about the funding of SEN to independent schools, as that seems to be creeping up quite significantly? The question that was posed to me was, well, is there any aim to reduce the dependency on independent schools and look at other provision, whether that be in or out of county?
Well, I can give you immediate answers that one of the main aims of the SEN Inclusion Change Programme is to reduce our reliance on these independent places, and to have places within Warwickshire, and to work within our own mainstream schools and special schools. I'm sure Ross may want to add to that, but that is the aim, Andy. Yeah, we do not want to use these schools as much. They're high cost, and we should be really trying to find places within our own schools.
That's fine. I was just asked to ask the
Yeah.
question, so
Yeah.
I'll pass on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ross, do you want to add anything to that?
No, it'll probably be picked up when we get to the DSG monitoring report as well, Phil. So I'll save it to them.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ross.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Michael Cowron, please.
Thank you, Philip. I'm relatively new to the forum, and have just been watching it really up to now. I'm used to receiving reports with alternative options on it. So when we go to make the decision, I'm not sure we're actually being asked to make a decision and what the implications are. So let's say we don't approve it. What are the implications of not approving, and what are the other options?
Okay. Obviously, the previous meetings where we talk about the schools block, the high needs block, and the early years block, options are put forward then, and recommendations are put forward, and alternatives are discussed, and especially within, for example, within the early years, where we have a working group that recommends change to that. Obviously, the decision by the schools forum and the council to follow the hard formula with the national funding formula, and decisions made by the schools forum itself on the de-delegated, there's not much else you can go in there. When it comes to this decision on the central schools block, again, there's very little that you can. A lot of these costs are fixed, so it's not about deciding not there. It's basically for you to decide off and say yes, you acknowledge that these are the costs, and this is where we're going to do. We have done some movements about slightly, and we're asking you to agree them. We're talking about 4 million out of a £500 million budget. There isn't that much manoeuvrability within it.
So what happens if the schools forum doesn't approve this?
Well, they'd have to approve the block as a whole, but then we'd then have to come back and say, well, you know, how do we approve it? We've never had that situation, to tell the truth, Michael.
No,
so.
which is the concern in itself, I think. And again, perhaps I'm misunderstanding it, but it sounds as though we're being asked to rubber stamp it, not approve it, and there's no other options being presented to us to consider. And maybe that's the case. Maybe,
yeah.
I'm not.
I put this. Well, I'm you know, I'm going through. I'm looking down that list. I'm thinking, well, that's fixed. That's fixed. We're told about that. That one, yes, there could be, but what else would you spend it on? It's that sort of situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's a fair question, but
so we're being asked to note it really rather than approve it, because there isn't really any other option, or is it a statutory duty that schools forum has to approve this block?
It is a statutory.
It's a statutory duty, and in practice there is very small amount of wiggle room. You know, we're talking about a very tiny amount in the global financing of all the blocks, to be honest. So that's the
position. No, we are, but I think we should only be asked to approve something if we are genuinely approving it and we're presented with other options to consider, and what are the implications of not approving it. And anyway, it's just an observation, and it's how I think we should look at everything we're looking to approve. It's, well, what happens if we don't?
Yeah, absolutely. Point well made. And there are some times you may have seen that we haven't approved things, and we've gone back and had a look at other things. So I've got Pamina and Andrew probably want to come in and talk about that. Do you, Pamina, first?
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, it was just to respond to you on that, Michael. It's a fair challenge, and you're right to challenge it. I suppose what I just wanted to say is there are times, as Phil has rightly said, that schools forum have not approved the options presented. So that does happen. Generally speaking, where we don't provide alternative options, it is because, and potentially we need to think about this actually, given your challenge, it is because we've had a clear steer from schools forum historically. So where we are following the national funding formula, that is because that is a choice schools forum has made a number of years ago. So we are sort of following in those in that direction. What we perhaps haven't done though is give clear indication of what happens if you don't approve. So I do think that is something we can follow through on. With something like the Central School Services block, I wouldn't propose that we put alternative options, because really it's hard to know what they are when there are so many fixed costs. But I will take what you've said on board. I think it's worth considering what the options are for those approvals that we're requesting for, where there's a possibility you won't approve. So thank you for your comment.
Yeah, thank you. Andrew, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I suppose anything to say. I think it's a fair point, and I think we probably need to remember that not everybody has the same historical memory of things that may have been agreed. So being clear on why we're presenting something in the way we're presenting it, and actually where there is potentially wriggle room that you might have some choice if you wanted to change your views from where you've been previously. We probably do need to present that moving forward. I think it is a fair challenge from that point of view. So we can work on that and look to see how we can adjust that moving forward, because it is a very fair point.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Cam, do you want to add to that?
Yes, please. I think, Michael, you've raised a really good point in that one. If you're like me and you haven't been in this forum before, you want to understand the background, and you want to understand how people have got to the position that they've got to when we receive the paper. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from. I think it's an action for us officers just to pick up from that. Whereas, you know, if we are going to be encouraging academies to join us too, again, we may be in a similar situation with, as is Michael, not knowing background info because they're new to this panel. So just a food for thought going forward. Maybe we could put some background information before we do present the report as well, just for going forward, if that's helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Pamina, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you. It was just to say,
Right.
actually, I know Dalbeer towards the end of the meeting will go through the forward plan. But actually, if there are members of Schools Forum here, and when we have the forward plan item, if either today's meeting or later on, after you've given it some thought, if there are some specific papers, as you will see in the forward plan, that you would like those options to be presented in a fuller way, then please do contact us through the schools funding email box, and we can absolutely speak to some of you in advance of preparing those papers even to get a better idea.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Nikki.
Yeah, thank you. Just to share, I think for Schools Forum perspective, the big concern is the pound per pupil reductions that is continuously happening. And I guess, Brian, is there anything we can be doing now to raise our concerns as School Forum about that? Because obviously in the media, we hear very much from the government how much they're pumping more money in schools than what they've ever done before, but we're seeing that per pound pupil reduction. Is there anything we can do?
Well, I think because it's such a small element of the overall DSG, it sort of gets lost in any of the consultations or the pressure that we try and you know put on the government for increased funding. It is always mentioned. I know that as a sort of I'm on a East Midlands Finance Officers group which discusses these sort of things, and it is something that comes up occasionally, but because it's so small compared to the rest, it sort of does get lost. I think it's just something we've got to manage. You know, that's all I can say really. I mean, I don't think they would listen to us. My own honest, I don't think it would just be lost in the rest of the government's issues to do with the, you know, let alone the other blocks. If you just think about the high needs block.
Yeah, bigger fish to fry, probably, Brian.
Yeah, couldn't put it better.
Okay, thank you, Faye.
Sorry, just took me a minute. I just wanted to ask about the reduction in spending on DBS checks and understand the rationale, because I've heard that there's some changes in when DBS checks are being carried out. I wonder if you could explain that, please.
Sorry, I'm struggling to see.
Sorry, I'm not sure what page it's on. It's on the first.
It's the first page. Okay, well, so this is to do with de-delegation.
Yeah.
So the actual amount of the budget that is allocated back to the local authority for DBS checks does change from one year to the next. A, because maybe the demand has gone down, but also if we have more schools that have gone academy from one year to the next, we naturally don't get as much de-delegated back to the authority.
Okay.
So it's not that there's been a reduction in the funding. There's just been a reduction in what can be de-delegated by maintained schools back to the local authority. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Brian, are we going to talk about potential issues with reduction in de-delegation availability later in the report, in the agenda? I think I've seen it somewhere, haven't
I? I don't know, Phil.
Okay, I thought I'd read the fact that as the number of maintained schools is falling, the amount of money that we can de-delegate to the local authority for managing some of the central services is going to get to a point where it's not sustainable, isn't it?
Yeah,
sure I've read that somewhere.
I can't remember if it's mentioned somewhere or we chatted about it
later on. Right,
yeah.
Okay. We'll move on. Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, notwithstanding the discussion that we've just had, we need to note the DSG budget for 23-24 and approve the Central School Services block for 23-24. All those in favour of that, can you please show by raising your hands? I'll make that 10, is that right?
I make
Yeah,
that 10
yeah,
as well.
thank you. Yeah.
Okay, if you'd like to lower your hands. And are there any against that proposal? Okay. Is this an act of rebellion, Faye? Is it your last meeting?
Sorry, no, I thought I'd put it down. It said it had. Sorry. There you go.
Right, okay, all right, I think that motion's carried. All right, we'll move. I thought you were just having a little sting in the tail because it's your last meeting.
That'd be
Right.
good, wouldn't it? But no.
We'll go on to item 5, which is the section 48 scheme for financing schools. Carmina, please.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, so this is item 5 on the agenda, scheme for the financing of schools. So this specific report is for maintained schools only. So it relates to maintained schools only, and the voting required is just for maintained schools as well. So by way of an introduction, we are as a local authority required to publish a scheme for the financing of schools, and that essentially sets out, it's quite a lengthy document, but it sets out the financial relationship between us, the council, and the maintained schools. Each year, or actually it can be several times a year, the ESFA or the DFE can update their blueprint that they publish on their website, which we are advised to follow. So every year I therefore do just a reconciliation between our scheme and the guidance that the DFE put out. Their most recent guidance is called Issue 14. So although we updated our scheme and brought that to Schools Forum in March of last year, typically on the 31st of March, the government updated their blueprint. So this really is to make sure that we are in line with that. So what I'm asking Schools Forum to do, and I will talk you through the proposed changes in just a moment, is I'm asking Schools Forum, first of all, just to note the proposed changes, and then to note that we will consult on those changes. So there will, of course, be an opportunity for maintained schools to respond through the consultation. I'm proposing for that consultation to be 5 weeks. It's a bit longer than we would normally offer, but actually there's school holidays, Easter holidays, and bank holidays in there as well. So it's a 5-week consultation, which I would be looking for Schools Forum to approve today in terms of the time frame. There's 2 changes that we're proposing. The first one then, and I'll run through it in just a second. The first one is one that is it would make sure that our clause relating to borrowing by schools is similar to that in the blueprint provided by the ESFA. And the second one is an update to the section that deals with licence deficit schemes. So if I can just, for those of you who've got the document open, if I could just ask you to go to the appendix, which is the document referenced 5A and to page 15. If it's helpful, I can share it on screen. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, it would.
Yeah,
please.
okay. I will do that now. Just bear with me. Sorry, it does take a little moment or two while my laptop whirls. If you could just confirm when you can see my screen.
Yeah, you can see
Brilliant. Okay. So for ease of reference, I've just made the changes in purple. So section 3.6, I've struck out what is no longer relevant and just tried to make the commentary a little clearer. So essentially, we don't operate loan schemes at Warwickshire, and if there are any loan schemes operated by schools, these have to be through the written permission of the Secretary of State, and that includes finance leases. Salex loans are no longer available. I do understand that some schools are still making repayments to the government, but in terms of being a loan that is now available, they're no longer relevant, hence I've struck through. But it is clear that schools can use any scheme that the Secretary of State has said is available. You don't necessarily need to get approval for those if they have been explicit that they are available. So I've just made that clause clearer, I hope. The next one then is the clause relating to the licence deficit scheme. Now, I haven't actually removed anything, as you'll see. There's nothing struck through. I'm not proposing to delete anything that was in the previous scheme, but I have added those sections here that you can see in purple. And the reason for that is I didn't feel, or we didn't feel, that this section reflected really current practice and needed, I thought, just to be a little bit tighter on the reasons for a licence deficit scheme, what the local authority considers when we're looking at the 3-year budget submissions that schools send in. There was no reference to the deficit recovery plan, and nationally speaking, that is a practice that a lot of local authorities put in place. So it seemed right that we note clearly that where schools are projecting a deficit recovery plan is good practice and therefore should be part and parcel of how we operate in order to bring the school back into balance. And then finally, there's a reference there to the sustainability action groups meetings that are set up to support all of those schools who are projecting a licence deficit. So I'm hoping that this makes things a little bit tighter without being too prescriptive, because obviously every school is different. So each sustainability action group meeting and each deficit recovery plan is going to be different for all the schools. So didn't want it to make it too prescriptive, but did want to make it clearer in terms of the processes that we follow. So before I ask for approval on the timetable, I'm very happy to take any questions, but also we'll just remind people that obviously your thoughts, we would welcome your thoughts and comments on this in terms of the consultation that we will send out next week.
Okay, thank you. That's very clear. Nikki.
Yeah, just to share, I think the consultation period is a good time frame. I think because you're given 3 weeks around the holiday period, so it gives enough time to be able to put your considerations in. And can I just share that the purple really helped? Really, that really helped highlight it. It was really useful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is it's a very interesting document. I mean, I think I'm sure head teachers and school business managers already aware of the document and its contents, but for any governors that are on here, I'd really recommend just having a look through and seeing what's in it, because it does answer quite a lot of questions that come up. You think, I wonder where the answer for that is, and quite often it's in this document here. So for all the governors on here, I would recommend having a look at that and sharing that through your forums and meetings. Okay, any further comments or questions? So what we're being asked to do is to note the contents. Oh, I better get back to the right report, haven't I? Right, okay. Yeah, note the changes and approve the timetable for consultation, please. So all those in favour of that, please show. And that's maintained schools only, isn't it?
It is. Thanks, Phil. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I make that 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5.
Okay. Anyone against? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. And item 6 is review of future meetings. And this is
Sorry,
about
that's me again, isn't it? Yes.
It's about where we hold our next meeting, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. So we have had a discussion at previous meetings about whether we want to continue with having Teams meetings. Generally speaking, I think Teams meetings do encourage a better attendance, actually, which is fabulous.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a discussion that said, well, maybe we should meet in June in person. So in terms of options for venues, if Schools Forum are still keen to do that, is unfortunately the date of the meeting, the 22nd of June, there is not a venue available in the council offices that is big enough to cater for at least 40 members, which is what we would be looking for Schools Forum if everybody were to attend. But very kindly, Michael Coland of Harris Church of England Academy has offered a space in that school, which is a great offer. So the school is in Rugby. We would propose that the meeting would be at the same time, so 2 till 4 on Thursday, the 22nd of June. So really, as an initial approval, really, we're looking to see if Schools Forum, all members, are keen to still meet in person, and if so, if that venue is agreeable to everybody.
Okay, floor's open to you. Opinions, please. Michael.
Thank you. Very happy to host it at Harris. I must just check with the head teacher first, though. I know I made the offer in this meeting, and I must just check with her that's all okay. I see no reason why it won't be, but please let me check with her and I can confirm back. But if people are happy in principle to be there, then we'd love to host it. But no, I must check with her.
Thank you. And just to say, Michael, obviously we would continue to help with any administrative requirements to make that work. So just to reassure you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had a bit of discussion about this over the year, and I think we said that we were happy to continue with Teams because we do get a better attendance, and people find that easy to do. Just come to the meeting, then you can go back and get on with your day. But I do think it would be nice to have a face-to-face meeting, which we haven't done for a couple of years, just so we can do a bit of network and have a little bit of a chat to each other. So unless someone tells me they don't want to do that, I'm going to recommend that we do that, and that we take up the kind offer to meet at Harris. So anybody disagreeing with that? Okay, sounds like a plan. Just let us know then, Michael, if there's any issues. Okay.
Always nice to visit Harris, isn't it, Michael?
It really is, isn't it? I can't promise Schools Forum members the same VIP tour that you had, but it is always nice to go to Harris.
All right.
There was one further item that I just wanted to mention here, actually, sorry, Phil, and that was an offer from Nick. So Nick from Evergreen very kindly said, although they don't have a space big enough perhaps to cater for a formal meeting, they do have a space if Schools Forum members would like to have just a get together more informally and a networking session, that was something that he might be able to facilitate towards the end of term. Perhaps, Nick, do you want to come in? This was your offer, so I shouldn't steal your thunder.
Just to say, yeah, we're a special school, and we've got a community book cafe which is open to the public. So if anyone wants to come see students and have a nice coffee or hot chocolate and just have a catch up or a network, you're very welcome at any time. But if you want to set a date, that's fine as well.
Yeah, I'd certainly be very interested in coming to have a look, Nick, from what I've heard in your discussions and contributions to the forum. So I'd be very interested in that. Nikki.
There's just a comment from Ricky in the chat, Phil.
Okay.
And can I vouch that the coffee and hot chocolate is very good at the Evergreen School, and they're very accommodating. So make a date.
Okay, all right. Ricky Ems has asked if we could do a hybrid offer if we come to a in-person meeting. We might be able to set that up, mightn't we? We put somebody in a laptop. Okay. Right, thank you. Shall we move on to item 7, please, which is the DSG monitoring report?
Thanks, Phil. I'll share my screen for this one. Okay.
Yeah.
Just let me know when you've got all that.
Yeah, I can
yep.
see it.
Okay, that's great. Right. This is for your information really about what's happening with the in-year position and the probable outturn position for 22-23 DSG. This is the forecasted position as at period 10, and it also shows you what the DSG reserve will be at the end of the 22-23, which was also previously mentioned in item 4. Mouse work. So if you go to the top of page 2, which is table 1, that is basically showing you the original allocation of the DSG, and then the amounts that have actually been then adjusted to come up with the latest allocation to what comes to Warwickshire County Council and maintained schools. So you can roughly see that it's the 500 million, 253 million either goes to is academy recoupment or high needs recoupment, and then additional elements of money that have come in during the year to bring up to the latest allocation, which we're forecast against, so the 247 million. Okay. Table 2 is really just summarising by block what the position is for 22-23. So we're showing that the forecasted spend is just over 251 million on a budget of the 246 million plus 1 million of reserves, which gives an overall overspend for the DSG forecasted at just over 3.5 million. The schools block, small underspend. High needs block is the large overspend, which has been reported throughout the year in detail. And then the early years block is an underspending, and the central schools block slightly overspending. What this does mean is that we're actually within the 1% threshold that the DfE suggests that that we have a recovery plan. We have a recovery plan that's working through on the high needs block recovery plan. So we're keeping on track with that. Just say we're within that 1% threshold. That 1% threshold is calculated using the gross DSG grant of just over 500 million. Table 3 is what the overall DSG reserves will be like at the end of the year if that 3.587 overspend actually occurs. So we'll have a overall DSG deficit position of 15 million, almost 16 million. The rest of the report is really going into a bit of the detail about the overs and underspends. Before then, the appendix, which gives you basically a table of all the budgets, similar to what you saw in item 4, and the same sort of breakdown by each of the 4 blocks. Okay, we'll just go back up. Schools block overall is a small underspend of 30,000. The high needs block, I'll come back to that in a second. The early years block is a £500,000 underspend. That's paid, excuse me, that's been due to sort of lower than expected take up of 3 and 4 year olds, a slight increase in our provision for 2-year-olds take up, and there's been some minor operational underspends from staff vacancies during the year. And then the central schools block is a small overspend, and that's been something which we've been trying to manage and have set the budget for the that you've just approved in item 4. So I go back up to the high needs block, which is the one major area of overspend. It's currently forecasting at 4.1 million overspend. This consists of a lot of overs and unders across the various budgets and services that are paid from the DSG high needs block. The detail in 4.4, sorry, and 4.5 shows you where the overspends are. You know, we've already been noted it's independent special school places. So the projections there are greater numbers of places having to be taken up with independent schools is increasing, and the actual unit cost increasing. We've also had some overspends on the supplemental funding to special schools and the teachers' pension payments to special schools, because there was that's basically against just the budget. The costs were already there, but we had some pretty poor guidance from the DfE when we set the budget at the beginning of 22-23. That's been rectified in the budget that's been set for 23-24. We've then got underspends which are offsetting a lot of this, to do with mainstream top-ups, resource provision, post-16 provision, and alternative provision. So it's really the big chunky budgets that we've got a lot of the variances on. All those elements have been reported previous school forum meetings and the quarterly meetings, that reports that go to our cabinet. That's about it then, Phil, I think.
Okay.
I'll keep it short and sweet. And obviously we'll be reporting the outturn as soon as we can. Probably, I think the first meeting will be at the June meeting, will be our outturn position.
Okay, all right. Okay, comments, questions, please. Blinded everybody with science.
I think they're feeling sorry for me, so let me off.
Yeah, hopefully.
Go on then, Nikki.
Go on, I'll go. Just early years book, I guess, for early years sessions at the moment, we know there's a lot of deficit in our maintaining nursery school budgets. We know that a lot of our PVIs are struggling with deficit budgets. So there is an underspending there. Now, we also know that our IDS grants that have been reduced to schools and settings this year because of the level of need of SEND children we're having in, or the amount of money we're getting in per child is reduced. So if there does continue to be an understanding in there, will that be considered in the early years working group then of how that then gets put back into all the settings?
Okay. I'll just correct you one thing, that the actual budget wasn't reduced for the IDS. It was we were over
more children.
Yeah, we were going over budget.
Yeah.
There has been a slight increase in that budget for 23-24. You'll be happy to know. I'm glad Jane's nodding. I just about remembered that. Thank you, Jane. So that has been increased. If I went back to the other report, you'll see a slight increase in that budget. It is something which, you know, it's a £35 million budget. It's a £500,000 over. That's a relatively small percentage, and the vast majority of it does go to the 2, 3, and 4-year-old provision, and it's very difficult to predict the take-up of that when we set the budget in, you know, basically in December, January. So it's just something we have to keep on monitoring. And you know, we have used some of the underspend this year for post-COVID recovery grants. I think there's been 5 or 6 grants which have been available to all providers.
Yeah.
So we are trying that. The take on that hasn't been particularly has been a bit disappointing compared to what we wanted. But
I think I could probably share a bit into that. I think because recruitment has been such an issue, and I think settings have really struggled to really staff to go on the training.
Yeah.
So it's been so tricky, and they want the training, but just can't facilitate it. I think is what we're hearing in our early years forums.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are extending. Well, not extending, but there's the third tranche going out next term. So hopefully we'll get some more take-up of that.
Get some more.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for that. Rebecca Harrison, please.
Hi, it was just to follow on from what Nikki was just saying. It's not just PVI sectors who are struggling financially with early years. It's all of them, the maintained as well as everyone else. We're all really, really struggling. And I think it's echoing what Brian was saying. Sometimes they've kept some of that funding aside because of the pupil numbers and when the dates come through for the funding versus when the censuses come through. So we tend to have that balance that can then be used for the following year. But I know as early years, we are trying to make sure that we are keeping that money in the early years sector and pushing it out. And I agree with you, whilst it was brilliant that we've got these schemes in place for the funding to go to, it's blooming hard work trying to find anyone to cover, because I know in our setting, we're struggling. The pay is poor for the work that you need to do for it. Nobody wants to come into it. They're all going to Lidl instead. So yeah, I feel the pain.
It's a good job we're not going to do something like expanding the sector to take in 2-year-olds then, isn't it? Right, Nick Evans, please.
Yeah, just to say, obviously there's quite a large forecast variance overspend on the independent sector. I'm sure Ross will want to come into that, but I don't know if school forum members are aware that there is a sufficiency strategy behind increased pupil places in special. Evergreen is due an expansion in the next couple of years, as well as Oakwood up in the north of the county. So Obviously, that's a concern with the 4 million forecast in independent special, but I'm sure that there's a plan of action to try and get that reduced. I don't know what the budget will look like for that type of provision next year, but there's definitely a concern that's such a big overspend.
Yeah, Ross, I think this is your cue to come in and talk to us about the.
Sorry, Ross.
That's fine, and I'm aware we have had a number
the
of,
work that's going on.
Discussions regarding high needs block before. So obviously I can go into more detail if we need to, but I'll in terms of the point of where we are in terms of I'll start with the independent sector, which is actually over the last few years, even before the SEND Inclusion Change program, we had reduced that significantly. So we went from 10% of those with EHC plans were in the independent sector right down to 6%, which is in line with national average. It is creeping back up again. We are seeing significant demand at the moment for specialist provision of mainstream schools, saying that they are unable to meet need, and we are because of that. We have more children in our specialist provisions than before. So in settings like Nick's, you'll have seen there's a little bit of, if you look at this, the SEND commissions, and you see that that's gone up £1 million. Part of that is we've commissioned extra places within year in some of our special schools. So we've commissioned extra places in our special schools. We've opened the Warwickshire Academy as a new school. Last year we opened 4 new resource provisions as well. So we now have 165 places in resource provisions compared to we didn't have any in 2015 when we started this. So we continue to create those places as alternatives. What Nick's just referred to is going forward, we have a strategy as well to continue to expand not only resource provisions, but we've looked particularly at areas of population growth, and Evergreen in Warwick and Oakwood in Nuneaton, where we have the fastest rise. So we've been prioritising those, and I think Cabinet approved the plans last week to allocate capital funding to go to those 2 schools and expand. And I've joked before with Nick that Nick's so close to the housing growth, he can see it from his school field. He can see the houses being built, so we know. But we have a space there, and we've approved the plans to go forward with that. So we continue to expand the specialist provision, but I think a word, and we've been through it before many times in Schools Forum, there is still a real need to upskill our mainstream schools as well, and improve across the piece. We have many fabulous inclusive schools, but there's a need to improve across the piece our mainstream offer, and those 2 things, our specialist offer and our mainstream offer, are really the key to bringing down with the spend and the use of our independence sector.
I'll just add that, I obviously remind that pre-2000, when we first came up with the predictions for the future high needs block deficit, that was without anticipating any additional funding from the government, without and just anticipating the increase where the trends were going. We were looking at, we were talking over £100 million deficit. Those predictions have reduced, both from additional funding from the government, but also from the actions that the SEND Inclusion Change program have put in place. So there is progress there. It's obviously not as our wildest dreams, getting it to a balance immediately is not on, but we feel across the board that we are getting there, and so we'll continue to progress those. I'm sure Ross and Dwayne will.
Thanks, Brian. I think you meant pre-2020 rather than pre-2000. That probably,
sorry.
Probably shows how long both you and I have been on Schools Forum.
Yeah, it probably does. Yeah.
But in terms of you're right, Brian. So we're in our initial forecast in 2020, when we set up the change program, actually from this point onwards, generally we were looking at a forecast of 11 million overspend each year. Now there are a range of factors to why that's reduced. I'd say 3 main ones. We have had additional funding from government, and thank you to our members as well for their lobbying of central government regarding that. We have had movements from the schools block block to the high needs block in previous years. We understand why we haven't done that this year, but that's been helpful, and we've had the impact of the change program. So those three things combined have actually, we know it's still not good to be talking about £3-4 million overspend each year, but we are in a better position than when we thought we would be, which would be talking about £11-12 million overspend each year. We still know we need to come back down and balance that budget, and we are still concerned that each year that cumulative total, which Brian's mentioned a couple of times, which we estimate at the end of next year will be 25 million, that's still got to be addressed somehow. So we know there are structural issues. We know the government have now issued, following the green paper, they've published their plan for SEN going forward. But yeah, I think hopefully we are going in the right direction, but day to day there are still those pressures on the local authority, and indeed on all our schools as well.
Yeah, thank you. Jane Carter, please.
I was just going to comment on one of the other overspends, which relates to Tier 4 hospital education, which is one of the areas that I manage. Post-COVID, we've seen a significant increase in the number of our young people admitted into Tier 4 beds, often under section, for a range of different mental health conditions, including eating disorders. And as soon as they're admitted, we become responsible for their educational provision. And it's demand led. We have no choice. We are just presented with an invoice. But one of the patterns that we've identified is that young people are being readmitted very quickly, sometimes within days of being discharged. So we've been given a little bit of money into the flexible learning team by NHS England in this next financial year to try and work with those young people as they're discharged from hospital to try and prevent that readmission. So we're working with colleagues in Coventry and Warwickshire Partnership Trust and the ICB to actually see what we can do to prevent those readmissions, and working closely together. So I hope we can turn the tide on that overspend.
This is another COVID side effect, is it?
It is.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Right. Thanks for that. Nick, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just to say, obviously, just one final point on the top up and the sorry for the independent special school top up. Just to say that's now tipped over 50% of our total top up. So it'd be really nice to see that decrease. And I suppose just to feedback to school forum members that having just come from the head teacher conference and Warwickshire sharing the education strategy, SEND is top of the list by an absolute distance in terms of work to be done. So just wanted to share that. That was something that was sort of hot off the press this morning.
Okay, great. Thanks for that update. All right, any more comments or questions on this, please? Okay, in that case, we'll move on to item 8, which is update on academisation. Dalbir.
Thank you, Phil. Just a brief update on academies. I'm going to share my screen with everybody so they can see the name of the schools. Since our update in September 2022, there are 2 schools converted to academy status. They are Newbold and Terrington Primary Church of England School, and the second one is Moreton Moral Primary School. They converted already to academy status, and now there are only 122 maintained altogether 122 maintained schools, which includes 6 nurseries and 113 primary schools, 1 secondary school, and 2 maintained special schools. And also there are 15 more schools they are planning to convert to academy status within the next 2 years. So that you can see the list of those schools on the screen. I'm going to share it with you now.
Yeah, we can't see it yet.
Yeah, I'm going to share it with you now. So these are the schools who are planning to convert within the next couple of years. Some of them have the date to convert, and some of them just dates to be confirmed, and the trust to be confirmed at the present. So that will reduce our overall schools even further from 122. Is there any questions? And we will bring another report in September on academization.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Comments and questions on that? All right, thank you. So item 9 is the forward plan, please.
Yeah, there's 2 items on forward plan for next 22nd of the June, the next school forum is. 2 items for decision, which is delegation and disapplication consultation timetable for 24-25. And if there's any update on Section 48 scheme of for financing schools, depending subject to changes of ESFA guidance, if there's any changes, we will bring that for decision as well. And there are 2 more items for comments. And also, I would like to make the school forum aware of it. If there's any item they want to add to the agenda, please can you send them to school's funding email address. I will with details of the items you want to add, so I can put them on to our forward plan. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any comments or questions on the forward plan? Okay. Just one item 10 then, first business. Again, just to formally welcome Johnny Kiriakou as our new Assistant Director of Education Services, and hopefully we'll get a chance to meet him face to face at our next meeting. And thanks to Chris Baird, who's been doing the interim role and leaves at the end of this month. So we'll thank him for his service. And again, just thanks to Faye Padfield, who's leaving us at the end of March. I've very much enjoyed your contributions to our debate, Faye. You've been a regular contributor to our discussion. Pardon?
Lots of questions, yeah.
Absolutely, but you know, we will miss your contribution to our discussions.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be on board. Good luck.
Okay, right. So our next meeting is on Thursday, the 22nd of June, and I look forward to seeing you all then. And I'd like to thank the officers, Dalby, O'Brien, and Panima for the reports today. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.